This is every single fight to make after UFC 285 Jones versus Gane. I have all of the key fighters from that card on the screen right now. Some winners, some losers, and you may notice there is an empty box next to all of them, and that's where their next opponent's going to go, who I have hidden around the perimeter of the screen. I'll slowly reveal those opponents one by one as the video goes on and place them where they belong on the screen. Let's start straight away with the main event's winner, Jon Jones. Amazing performance over Cyril Gane. No damage whatsoever, which is a very, very important bit of information. We already kind of know what's next for Jon Jones, though. I don't even need to talk about this with you guys. It's been confirmed. Stipe Miocic is going to be next for Jon Jones in the heavyweight division. We can talk about this matchup a little bit, though, I guess. I want to see this in July. International Fight Week. I was thinking maybe they could do this in June, but I feel like they might be doing like a UFC Mexico pay-per-view in June. Just a hunch that I have with all of the Mexican champions that they have and the schedules of those Mexican champions lining up to be able to fight in June. But we need a great event, International Fight Week, light heavyweight GOAT Jon Jones, heavyweight GOAT Stipe Miocic. You can market that fight as that. And that would be an amazing matchup. Do I believe that Jones would make easy work of Stipe Miocic? Because it turns out heavyweights can't grapple and they got completely exposed last night. Yes, I do think Jones would make easy work of Stipe Miocic. However, the wrestling background of Stipe would at least maybe entice Jon Jones to test out some things on the feet, which could make it a little bit more interesting of a matchup. So I'm looking forward to that. Make it happen. Just get it done soon. You know what I mean? I want this announced on the Adesanya Pereira 2 pay-per-view. You know what I mean? When the main card starts, boom, they announce Jones versus Miocic. Make it happen. July, big pay-per-view. I think Ngannou's going to be fighting around July as well, so you want to have a really good competition for that. So if Ngannou's fighting Wilder or Joshua, you want to have Jones Miocic with an amazing undercard underneath it as well. So that's the matchup I want to see. We move on to the loser of the main event, Cyril Gane. First of all, get right back in there, you loser. Okay? Shamed me. In front of all my friends. He shamed me. In front of all of my online buddies. Cyril Gane embarrassed me. In front of all of them. And now I look a right fool. Okay? No damage taken. So no layoff. Right back to work. And I'll tell you who you're getting back to work against. Because we need to find out if you have grappling or you don't. You're getting back in there with Sergey Spivak. He's a great fighter. I'd love to fight him. And I'd love Cyril Gane to fight him as well. Sergey Spivak. Amazing. There's no other matchup that really makes sense unless we're going to have him wait for the loser of a potential matchup coming up soon in Blades versus Pavlovich or something like that. But Sergey Spivak is on the rise. He just had a huge win against Derek Lewis. He has a win over Taito Ivasa as well. So, I don't know about you guys, but before I see Cyril Gane take on any top contender in the heavyweight division or even remotely get close to earning a title shot again, I need to see him fix the grappling problem. And if he stuffs takedowns against Sergey Spivak, he will rightfully show that he's fixed that problem in his game, and maybe he's not as terrible as he may seem, and maybe Jones and light heavyweight grapplers are just that much better than those in the heavyweight division. So I think this is a great matchup for Cyril, because it's a tough matchup for him. I think the odds will be really close as well, whereas maybe they wouldn't have been before the Jones fight happened, because of how easily he got destroyed on the ground. I think this is a great matchup to make. Fight night main event in the Apex in front of a crowd. Who knows what they're going to do? Maybe even in Paris. I'm not sure. Maybe the Paris main event. Cyril Gane, Sergey Spivak, heavyweight clash. Make it happen. August, July. We need to see this. I need to see Cyril redeem his grappling skill before I even put him in there with any conversation of a fight at the top of the heavyweight division. We move on. Alexa Grasso wins the co-main event. They're just going to run back the Shevchenko fight, let's be real. So, Valentina Shevchenko gets the immediate rematch against Alexa Grasso. She defended the belt so many times. I want to say 7 times she defended that belt in the flyweight division, maybe 6. So yeah, you got to give it an immediate rematch. And I think this is good for the division as well, because even if Shevchenko does win the rematch, which is likely, she'll probably be the favourite in the rematch as well, because she was on her way to winning that matchup before going for that spinning back kick to the body. If she doesn't throw a spinning back kick, she's probably on her way to a win in that fight with her grappling on top. So I really like this matchup. Let's run it back, and let's do it in Mexico as well. June. I'm thinking June, main event, pay-per-view, Alexander Volkanovski versus Yair Rodriguez. Co-main event, Alejandro Pantoja versus Brandon Moreno. Another Mexican title fight. Feature fight, Alexa Grasso versus Valentina Shevchenko 2. June, Mexico pay-per-view, main, co-main, and feature fight, all Mexican title fights. The odds of one of them winning in Mexico is pretty likely then, because otherwise they might all lose. You know what I mean? So you got to have at least one of them win in Mexico to have that moment of them becoming a star. So that's what I think they should do. And I think they should put Grasso versus Shevchenko on that card while they match up the rest of the flyweight division. Outside of it, let's get Taylor Santos versus Erin Blanchfield. Who knows? Let's get, I don't know, Manon Fiorot versus Amanda Ribas. I'm not sure. We move on to another matchup. Shavkat Rakhmonov got a big win in the feature fight against Jeff Neal. People are talking about Colby Covington. I need you guys to understand, this was number 11 versus number 7. He's not going to get the fight with Colby Covington. We got to be realistic here. Belal Muhammad, Chimaev, and Covington are in a trio right now at the top of the welterweight division. That's how I see it. One of them's going to get a title shot against the winner of Usman Edwards 3, and the other ones out of those trio are going to fight each other for a title shot. And I think that's the best way to structure that division at the moment. Other than that, someone who's going to be on a similar schedule to Shavkat Rakhmonov, I didn't even think about this, but it needs to be Gilbert Burns. They're at Killcliff together, but this is the one that makes sense schedule-wise for the division. And I know they train together, and it's going to be, oh, but we train together. I really don't care. Maybe it'll end up being Masvidal. Who knows? But Gilbert Burns is fighting in April, in a couple of weeks' time on that pay-per-view, and if he wins, you know, there's a trio. Belal Muhammad, Colby Covington, Khamzat Chimaev. One of them's getting a title shot at the top of the welterweight division, and the other ones are going to fight each other for a title shot. So this kind of has to happen. Otherwise, you're doing Shavkat Rakhmonov versus Stephen Thompson, and that's just Shavkat gets an inside trip and dominates Stephen Thompson on the ground. It's not that interesting. Gilbert Burns' fight makes sense if Masvidal gets the upset. Masvidal versus Shavkat Rakhmonov. He deserves a big fight next, for sure, but I don't think he quite deserves a title elimination bout. He's got to get 2 more, and then we'll start talking about title shots. And for Gilbert Burns, although he's come back and he's won a fight since losing to Khamzat Chimaev, it was Neil Magny, and now it's Jorge Masvidal. So they're not really like top 5 wins, right back in the mix type of fights. Like, he's taken layups for himself almost to get himself some momentum back, and then Shavkat would be that real test to earn himself a title elimination bout afterwards. So I think they need to match them up against each other. There's so many Killcliff guys at the top of the welterweight division at the moment, so it's not even like I'm being mean by pairing them up. That's a matchup I think would be interesting, and then we can see how Shavkat Rakhmonov relates to Khamzat Chimaev before that fight eventually happens. Make this shit happen. I swore for no reason. We move on to another fight on the main card, which was Matheus Gamrot getting a win over Jarlin Turner. Very good win from Matheus Gamrot. Very close, actually. Not a great win, if we're being honest here. He's going to need a little bit of time off. So let's do him versus the loser of Justin Gaethje versus Rafael Fiziev. I think it's going to be Justin Gaethje. That's what I think. I think Justin Gaethje loses. Gamrot's already been calling him out before in his career. We can't quite immediately run back the Arman Tsarukyan matchup either. He won't fight Dustin Poirier because they're both at ATT and their main training partners. So it's just a weird scenario where you've got to kind of give him one of these big names in the division. I was thinking maybe saying, you know, give him Dan Hooker next in a division, or Renato Moicano or Drew Dober, but they're going to do Renato Moicano versus Drew Dober. Damir Ismagilov's coming off a loss. RDA's at welterweight, and he's got a lightweight ranking position. It just doesn't make sense right now in the lightweight division unless you want to wait for Dan Hooker's hand to heal. And I don't even know if Gamrot's going to be ready to turn around that quickly. So I think the loser of Gaethje versus Fiziev will take a bit of damage and want a little bit of time off. And maybe we can have them face off against each other, either Gaethje or Fiziev. Fiziev actually would be more sense as a matchup, right? Because it'll be good, and I think they're going to try and save Gaethje for like a rematch with Poirier if both of them lose. They'll try and save Gaethje for big fights, but this is a fresh matchup, And if Gaethje loses, it's about time he starts taking on some up-and-coming contenders. And Gamrot is that guy right now, rebounding against a very top contender on the rise in Jalen Turner. So Matheus Gamrot, Justin Gaethje, could be seeing that on the undercard, main card of Jon Jones versus Stipe Miocic. Or Rafael Fiziev. Whoever loses that matchup, I just think it's going to be Gaethje. So it'll probably be Fiziev, knowing my big fight picks. We move on. Bo Nickal. Got a nice little groin shot sub, as I like to call it, against Jamie Pickett. Man, you know what I mean? Absolutely devastating stuff. I don't want to raise him up the division too fast. This is the problem with Bo Nickal. I don't want to raise him up the division too fast. A lot of people are going to say, oh, Brad Tavares? No. Someone outside the rankings again. Let's be real. Jamie Pickett is the bottom of the barrel in the middleweight division. And there's a lot of middleweights as well. So it's like, he's going to be right at the bottom. I think he needs like 2 or 3 unranked wins before we start looking at like ranked opponents. So I think it's going to be this one, then a GM3, and then we start talking about him versus ranked opponents. But I think this is a good one because it brings up the conversation of Dagestani versus American wrestler Albert Duraev, coming off a loss to Joaquin Buckley. Joaquin Buckley's moving down to welterweight. That's a great fight. Bo Nickal, Albert Duraev, make it happen. Makes sense. Makes all the sense in the world to me. All the sense in the world. I'd really enjoy it. I think that would be a really good conversation to bring up in the build-up of that fight as well. Probably not going to be on a pay-per-view main card, that matchup. Probably going to be on the prelims of a pay-per-view from now on, because I don't think Bo Nickal quite made the splash and the noise that they were hoping for him to make on the main card. So maybe it'll be on a fight night card in June or July or something along those lines. Maybe you do it in Mexico and just have that extra bit of spice on the main card of that pay-per-view. Who knows? Bo Nickal versus Albert Duraev is a great matchup, and I'd love to see it. So that's one that I'm looking for. We move on to another matchup, which is Cody Garbrandt. Got a win over Trevin Jones. Took no damage whatsoever, so I'm saying get him right back in there. Against, now hear me out, I think this is a really good matchup. Not ranked, name value, on a little bit of a slide right now in his own career. Winnable for Cody Garbrandt. Also dangerous for Cody Garbrandt. Fun matchup as well. It's Cub Swanson. I think that's the matchup right there. I've done a great job there. As soon as I saw that name, I was like, okay, this is the one for Cody Garbrandt next. Cub Swanson, coming off a loss to Jonathan Martinez. Brutal loss. Going to need some time off, or a little bit more time off. Garbrandt took 0 damage, so he can get right back in there. I say do Cody Garbrandt versus Cub Swanson. I think that would be a great matchup. I think it's great name value. It could be a good co-main event of an Apex fight night. Am I wrong? That's fun. That's a fun matchup. I know we want to give maybe Cody Garbrandt a surging contender coming up or a ranked contender straight away again. I think give him something fun that will appeal and almost entice him into a good fight. And Cub Swanson's one of those fighters that's not just going to let it go to a decision. You know what I mean? He's going to make Garbrandt have a fun fight with him. And it's like a toss-up of a fight because they're both dangerous. So I think that's a good matchup. Cody Garbrandt, Cub Swanson in the bantamweight division. Make it happen. I'd really look forward to that on a fight night card in the co-main event. We move on. Dricus du Plessis. I think you honestly match him up with Robert Whittaker. Because I've been thinking about it. Chimaev's now talking about staying at welterweight, and there's conversations that he's been given a title shot from his coaches. Like his coaches are saying that like he's getting the next title shot in the welterweight division, which is why I tried to do Rakhmonov versus Burns, because it's looking like they're going to do Covington Bilal Muhammad, which is weird, but they might do that. You know what I mean? We're hearing Chimaev staying at welterweight, so he ain't going to do Chimaev versus Whittaker now. Du Plessis says yes to anyone, and he makes quick turnarounds if the opportunity is good enough. You don't really want to do Du Plessis versus Jared Cannonier, because then that leaves the only other opponent for Robert Whittaker is Strickland. Costa doesn't want to fight Robert Whittaker. I want to do Costa versus Strickland. I think that's the matchup. They're calling each other out for a fight as well, and they're going to fight quite soon, I imagine. You also don't want to leave Whittaker to wait for the winner of Vettori versus Delidze in London, because if Vettori wins, Whittaker just beat him. So it's like, and then you've also got, do you want to give Whittaker the Cannonier rematch this soon after it happened? It's like a weird moment right now. So if Khamzat Chimaev's staying at welterweight, which is the rumor now that he is going to get a title shot against the winner of Usman versus Edwards 2, Dricus du Plessis versus Robert Whittaker is the only fresh matchup I can think of. So I think you do that one. You do that matchup. I don't know where you do that matchup. Maybe you could save it in June for like a UFC fight night. Johannesburg, South Africa, Pretoria, whatever they want to do. Cape Town, I'm not sure. That could fight night headline anywhere. Even in Australia, they could do a fight night headliner with Whittaker versus du Plessis. They could also put it on a pay-per-view in Mexico in June, put it on International Fight Week in July. I don't know what they want to do with it, but that seems to be, if Chimaev's staying at 170, which is the current rumor, that's the only one that makes sure that there's a fresh matchup for Whittaker. And du Plessis now in the top 5, and he didn't take much damage against Brunson. And he said, like, if there's opportunity to fight a title elimination bout, I'm not going to be taking a lot of time off. So this is the opportunity, and I think he would take it. We move on to another matchup, which is Ian Garry. Got a good win in the welterweight division. He's now 4-0 in the welterweight division. He wants to fight in Miami. Now, there's two options. Joaquin Buckley is an option. I want him to be included. But I don't know if they're going to go with Joaquin Buckley. They might do. It's a good matchup, and it'll be interesting. I get that. But I don't know if he's even going to be able to do that. 5 weeks' time. He just had a tough fight. You know what I mean? Like, it's tough to trust Joaquin Buckley coming down in weight to even make weight. You know, after so long of not being in the welterweight division. He has no stock in the welterweight division either. So it's kind of like, for Ian Garry, it's like, why would I take on this guy? He's a big name. So maybe Joaquin Buckley is the name. But I think an equal name just outside the rankings that he could get on 5 weeks' notice is Muslim Salikov. Coming off a great win against Andre Fialho, who is Ian Garry's training partner. So there might be a bit of an incentive there for Ian Garry to try and get that fight back for himself. Muslim Salikov, Ian Garry, on the pay-per-view in April. I just don't think Joaquin Buckley's going to be able to make welterweight on that short notice after just being KO'd by Chris Curtis. It seems like wishful thinking to try and call out for that matchup. But if they can do it, sign me up for Ian Garry versus Joaquin Buckley on that April pay-per-view card in Miami. I really want that card to get an extra little bit of an additional fight in the welterweight division. It will be on the early prelims again, though. That's the problem with Ian Garry. If he wants to be on that card, he's going to be on the early prelims again. Which I'm okay with because it adds some spice to the early part of the card. But you do want to start putting Ian Garry in the co-main event of a fight night, the feature fight of a fight night, the prelims of a pay-per-view co-main or headliner spot. Like, you want to give him that spotlight. So if he goes on that Miami card in April, he'll be way down the card. So Muslim Salikov or Joaquin Buckley. I don't really trust Joaquin Buckley being able to make it to that fight. So I'm going to trust in Muslim Salikov instead. And if he wins that one, he's starting to look towards the rankings like a Neal Magny matchup in the welterweight division. I always bring up Neal Magny to sacrifice to a new contender. See you later. Goodbye. Toodle pip. Yeah.